People who live alone for long periods of time should not keep two pairs of dishes on the table. Don't believe me? Don't say I didn't warn you. I've been living alone for a long time. I rent a house. Bachelors generally aren't very sophisticated. I've used dishes that I've often been too lazy to scrub, and then I finally look at them and see that they're just too dirty, so I bring up a new pair. So I had more than 2 pairs of dishes on my table, along with leftovers and whatnot, literally sprawled across the table. I was so stressed that I had to listen to a bedtime story every night to fall asleep. Every time I listened to half of it, I drifted off to sleep, and when I opened my eyes again, it was dawn. And the bedtime story is still playing on the cell phone. But gradually, something weird happened. At first, I noticed that I woke up especially tired every morning, as if I hadn't slept all night. Isn't listening to a bedtime story relaxing? A lot of people do. But why is it like I've been listening to lectures all night every time? It's full of chaos and very noisy. The cloud of doubt in his heart gradually rose and could not be dissipated. So much so that every night, when I habitually turn on my cell phone before I go to bed, I'm still struggling with this in my mind. When you have something on your mind, you can't sleep well. This night, while I was still hazy, I suddenly realized it wasn't a bedtime story that entered my ears. What's that noise? I composed myself, keeping my body still, and went to identify it carefully, followed by a chill that leapt up my spine from the soles of my feet. That strange sound at first sounded like a secret language, some creature expressing something in some language. Gradually, I discerned that there was not one but several voices, and they seemed to be arguing. Listening more carefully as my consciousness cleared, I suddenly understood the words, which were clearly a group of people arguing about something. The group is over there at the table. My first reaction was not one of horror, but of exasperation. Since it's a human voice, there's nothing to fear. I'm angry because, who are they to break into my house and disturb my sleep? I didn't get up right away, so I closed my eyes for a moment and listened again. Give me a set of cutlery. I haven't eaten in a long time. Let me eat. You can't join us. These are ours. The more I listened, the more annoyed I became, and suddenly it occurred to me, my door was surely locked. How did they get in? So are they human or not? I couldn't help but get goosebumps on my body, but a fierce energy immediately rose up. I yelled out, "What are you doing?" I tried to sit up with my eyes open, but they wouldn't open. I couldn't move my body. Again I yelled out, "What are you doing?" Instead of stopping, the bickering over at the table became sharper and more intense, as if a million beans were smashed on an iron plate, giving me a splitting headache. Fear and anger mingled in my heart, and I suddenly remembered that a monk had advised me to read through the Earth Store Sutra, saying that it would protect me from ghosts and gods. I haven't read it once because I'm lazy. At this moment, I have no other choice but to simply shout, "Namo Jizo Buddha." For a split second I could actually move my hand. I hit the bed hard and sat up. There was silence all around. I turned on the light, startled. I looked toward the table. There was no one, no creature, nothing out of the ordinary, but the dishes on the table seemed to have been moved. But my leftover bread and leftovers have not diminished, and a strange smell filled the air. It's like old bedding that's been aging in the basement for decades, wet and rotting and pungent. Is this a dream or not? My name is Leon. I'm unemployed. It's the middle of winter at the moment, and I just moved into this building a short time ago. Call it a building district, it's more like a tomb complex. It's a dangerous stretch of buildings to be demolished, located along a cold highway on the outskirts of town. It was a few kilometers from the city and a few kilometers from the next town, a vast expanse of two missing front and back. Once the sky was dark and quiet, the moonlight was dead. The old tenants have long since moved out, but a few poor people have moved in. Me, for example, only for the cheap rent, $300 for the whole winter. The heating stopped long ago, and with only water and electricity, the house was extremely cold. Luckily I dumped an antique electric heater out of the closet. I'm living on it now. I put it on the ground and sat cross-legged next to it, roasting my hands and face one moment. I don't have a penny left. I'm going to find a way to eat today. I've had so much bad luck lately that it's hard to find a job to make ends meet, and I've tried many times. However, I am not worried. There is always a way out, and the dark clouds in the sky always lift, so my grandmother used to say when she was alive. As it is now, I have an idea. I can sell my old clothes. From here, heading into town, you'll pass through a lively neighborhood. There was an old woman who used to sit on the side of the road with a small sign by her side, collecting old clothes at high prices. I packed all my decent clothes, even a gorgeous coat that I hardly ever wore, in the hope that I would get a large sum of money in return. At the moment it was 5 in the afternoon and it was getting dark again. With my bag on my back, I headed down from the fourth floor, the cold wind howling outside the building, mixed with a kind of rumble that seemed to come from the ground. The whole building is shaking like a sick person and seems to be really unstable. I should be the only one living in this hallway because I haven't seen another living thing in all the days I've been moving here. But today I heard voices speaking indistinctly, and I don't know from which portal. 3 floors? 2 floors? Or basement? In a desolate place like this, it's a warming thing to know that a few neighbors are around. I got on my bike and was passing the building next door when a brick suddenly fell from the sky and snapped and shattered next to me. Who's trying to smash me to death? I was furious and looked up when a head poked out of the upstairs window. A man with disheveled hair smiled with a wide-eyed grin and said, "Table cutlery, don't put too much on it." Table cutlery? What can you do with a psycho? Forget it. I rode my bike and found the old woman. She was eating a burger against a stone curb. The air was cold but restful and comfortable. She picks at my package a few times and says she'll give $50. I'm in a hurry. It's almost treacherous. I said, "Look, why don't you give me $100 for this coat, this color?" The old man disagreed, shaking his head around with his eyes closed, grunting, bullying my old man. $50 is a lot of money. I said to myself, you still have burgers to eat, I can't even afford them. I had no choice but to give in because I was hungry. Taking her $50, I turned around and bought 2 loaves of bread. I heard it was Christmas Eve, so I stopped by and bought another apple. Well, that's extravagant. Go home. By the time we got back upstairs, the wind had stopped and it was dark. I want to boil a kettle of water to drink, or I can't swallow this bread. Damn it, the water's out. I grabbed my water bottle and pushed out the door. I had to get some water. I'm so embarrassed right now that I really don't want to be around strangers. I went down to the 3rd floor and listened carefully. It seemed that there was someone in the house on the east side, and the door was quite busy, like a group of people were having some kind of party. Gathering my courage, I reached out and knocked on the door. In that instant, the voices in the house suddenly stopped. I expected someone to answer the door, yet after waiting half a day there was no movement. Is this not welcoming me? Hesitantly, I carried the kettle down to level 2 again. In the silence of the hallway, a magnetic sound could be heard, interspersed with a sigh. I was about to carefully identify. Suddenly a strange wind leaped into the hallway. The door in the middle of the house may be unlocked, all of a sudden pushed open by the wind. I saw a woman sitting in the inner room and she was drinking. I noticed that the bottle of wine was 60 proof white wine. There was a plate of hot dogs on the table. Clip a piece of hot dog, take a couple sips of wine, and that's how the magnetic sound comes out of her mouth. This one detail made me feel good about her. Because I'm also an alcoholic, I especially appreciate women who love to drink. Looking closely at the woman, she was in her 30s, plainly dressed in work clothes for manual labor. She was sitting on her side, her legs were long and slender, her buttocks tight and firm. Her hair was a little dirty and her face was gaunt, but she was clearly a beauty. I was dumbfounded. I felt an affinity for her. She saw me too, huffed, stood up and kicked the door of the room shut with a flying kick. The doorway threw 2 words at me, rascal. Where did I go rogue? I didn't even say a word. No God, I just want a water, right? It's like I'm smelling the familiar smell of wet rot again. I went down to the 1st floor and knocked on each door but nothing happened. I looked into the dark basement again but forget about it, there could be no one there. I hung my head and carried my kettle up the stairs, and this time as I passed the 3rd floor, the door of the house to the east of the party suddenly opened. A feminine and soft hand reached out and beckoned to me. The woman who opened the door, housewife-like, hair lazily pulled back, wearing only an apricot-colored thermal underwear, the full-bodied physique is revealed. I looked behind her. 5 or 6 people were seated around a table, cups were flowing, the heat was on, and they were eating dumplings. It stands to reason that the people who come to live here are poor. But apparently they were the aristocrats of the poor. Because they had so many electric heaters in their houses, the heat was intense. So cozy. Come on, let's eat. You're the little brother upstairs, aren't you? The host greeted him warmly. I'll just order some water, I whispered. I was a bit embarrassed in front of this group of rich and famous people who could eat dumplings. No. Mia, get him a set of cutlery. Mia is the woman who opened the door. She enthusiastically tugged on my arm and pulled me over to the table, adding a stool beside her so I could sit next to her. She took a bowl and filled it with dumplings for me, shoved it into my hand and said with a big smile, "Eat." The aroma of dumplings mixed with the scent of a mature female body. This sudden happiness made me dizzy. I ate 3 big bowls in a row, and the host and hostess poured me wine frequently. I was not much better, and I drank a full 2 pounds of the 1 pound amount. The wine was full and I thankfully excused myself, carrying my already filled water bottle. Before going upstairs I suddenly remembered something. I pulled out that apple in my pocket, went down to the second floor and snuck it by the door of the woman who ate hot dogs, drank white wine and was giving me the cold shoulder. When I went back upstairs I suddenly felt strange. Why was I hungry at the moment when I had almost died earlier? I crawled into bed and ate that bread with plain water. After just a few bites I drifted off to sleep. In the middle of the night, I suddenly heard noisy arguing and aggravated crying. A jolt went through me. Last night's events had resurfaced. The voice was again coming from the table in the house. I tried to get up, couldn't move, tried to scream but couldn't make a sound. I tried to open my eyes and this time they managed to open a crack. I could vaguely see a few grayish shadows sitting at the table. I can only call them shadows because they were strangely shaped, not quite human, and I couldn't make out their features. They were grayish-white around and slightly fluorescent. Their stomachs were surprisingly large, but their necks were thin like a wire and topped with crooked heads. The one on the left was crying in aggravation. "Let me have another bite, please, let me have another bite." The others rebuked, "Good food is a waste in your mouth. We agreed to have 3 bites each, so don't come back next time if you don't behave." What are they eating? I just saw a humanoid object with a white light on the table. Wait. Why does that thing look a bit like me? Who is he? And who am I in that bed? In shock, I opened my eyes wider. I surveyed the person on the table, the eyes, the figure, and yes, it was myself. Only that eye was all white, like a piece of human food made of hot dogs. That eye was being enjoyed by them. The one on the left sobbed, picked up a piece of my arm with cutlery and begged, "Last bite, last bite." With that it stuffed the piece of arm into its mouth. However, just as it was about to chew, flames erupted from its thin neck, charring the delicacy to a crisp. It cried in despair, "If I had known today I would not have raped that woman." A few others swarmed over it and grabbed its cutlery, calling, "Stop eating, stop eating. It's our turn." They opened their mouths wide at my arm. I say eat, but it's actually a very difficult thing to eat. Because their necks are so thin, the food gets stuck when it reaches their throat, and they have to use a lot of force to barely swallow it. A small piece of food takes half a day to swallow. Lying on the bed, my whole body was cold at the moment, only my left arm was hot and itchy. And it was the left arm that was being eaten by the being on the table. I couldn't figure out what was going on. My consciousness felt like it was caught in a black vortex, falling all the way down to the deepest part, gradually moving away from my body. It was the wine. It was all that booze they poured down my throat that paralyzed my consciousness. I regretted that I shouldn't have craved for alcohol. And my eyelids were so heavy that I could hardly open them. At the moment, the things finished eating my left arm and started eating my heart. Am I going to end up? But they don't move my heart at all. Cutlery poking up against my heart is like hitting a piece of iron and clanking. Too hard. "Let's get Mom to spice it up for us later." I heard them say that and lost consciousness completely. When I woke up, the window was glowing. I knew it wasn't a dream this time because something was wrong with my left arm. The veins of the blood vessels were vaguely blackened, could barely make a bending motion, and gave off a putrid odor. What did they eat me for? What did they do to my arm? What the hell are they? I went to the hospital. I painfully took out $10 to register. The doctor took a look at my arm and said that he suspected that the meridians were not working, and the muscles were partially necrotic, and asked me to go and take a picture, and I said that I couldn't afford to take a picture, and asked me to buy medication for it, and when I heard that it was going to be several hundreds of dollars, I twisted my head and walked away. Everything will be all right. Somehow at this point I'm still not too glum. I'm often optimistic for no reason. There is something strange about this house, and it is imperative that we escape and find another place to live. But where else would I get the money? Who else can I count on? After my parents divorced, I lived with my dad. Soon after that my dad died. People said that I had a heavenly fire destiny and my dad had a water destiny, saying that my dad was killed by me. My grandmother raised me on her own. I had just finished college when she passed away. I worked part-time to support myself and was comfortable for a few years. But lately my luck is like falling headlong into the gutter. Nothing is going right, I'm hitting walls and now I can't even eat. If I want a new place to live, where can I get the money? Do I have to borrow money? I'm a man of honor. Borrowing money is worse than killing me. However, compared to your face, your life is more important. So I knocked on the door of my only best friend, Lucas. Lucas was happy to see it was me. He cooks for me. We eat and catch up. I was holding my rice bowl and I couldn't say anything like, "Lend me some money." I thought, if I can't, I'll beg him to let me stay for 2 days so I can hide for a while. Who knew that before he could even open his mouth, Lucas would say, "You're in your 30s, are you married?" I said no. Lucas said, not without amusement, "I'm engaged and that girlfriend of mine is beautiful, and she's coming to see me tonight." I said, "Come on. Why am I still here as a light bulb?" By the time he got out of Lucas's, the sun was already slanting in the west, the last flashes of red fighting the darkness. I rode my bike back thinking, When I get through this night, I'll go find a place to work tomorrow that covers food and shelter. At that moment, I happened to pass by the old woman's place, only to see that two drunken men were snatching things from her hands. The old woman said nothing but would not let go and was pushed to the ground by the drunks. I can't stand to see this kind of thing, and the fire in my heart burned up. Although one of my hands is now equal to a half cripple, two scums I don't put in my eyes yet. Fuck off. This is my grandmother, I yelled. The two of them saw that I was skinning and laughed as they came up and pulled me down. I stomped on one man's belly and swung my right fist to smash him over. The other man was still going to lash out, so I met him directly, staring at him face to face, and said in a cold voice, "If you don't get out, I'll bite off half of your face." He saw in my eyes that there was a high probability of the bite thing happening, and panicked, dragging his accomplice away. The old woman climbed to her feet, wiped the dirt off her body, and carefully hung the object she had just been robbed of around her waist. I can't tell what it is, short with a tip in her waistline hanging 10. I forgot to mention this old woman, in addition to collecting old clothes, but also sell all kinds of knickknacks on the side stalls. "Great-grandson, thanks to you," the old woman said. I sat idly by and watched the old woman pack her things. Looking at the lingering red in the sky, I suddenly wanted to ask her, "Auntie, do you say there are ghosts in this world?" "Yes." "Huh. Does that ghost hurt people?" "Strictly speaking, a ghost will only settle scores with its enemies. If you have no grudge against it, it can't do anything about you. So you're saying that people who are haunted by ghosts are sinful and deserve it?" "Something like that." "So, once you've been targeted by a ghost, is there any salvation?" "Generally speaking, ghosts only haunt people for 7 days, and if you're fine for 7 days, you'll be considered to have survived." "Auntie, do I look like I've done something bad?" The old woman laughed. "Who can say when you know the face of a man?" I shook my head and got up to go. The old woman suddenly called out to me, "I never owe favors. You helped me once, I have to give you something. Take this." I took it and saw that it was the same trinket that had just been snatched by the drunk. Of copper, the lower part is triangular and conical, and the upper part it is not possible to say whether it is a ghostly face or a statue of Buddha. What's the point? It's a keychain. It's for you. When I came downstairs, I saw the hot dog-eating, white wine-drinking woman, let's call her the hot dog princess, struggling to lift a gas can. She tried to lift a few times, couldn't, covered her chest and coughed for a long time, then stubbornly continued to lift, still couldn't. She frowned and pressed her belly, arching her back as if she was holding back some pain. Without further ado, I went up and helped her carry it up to the second floor, then waited for her to praise me. Princess Hot Dog rolled her eyes and said, "No good." I was furious. "I was kind enough to help you, is this human talk?" She pulled out the apple and screamed, "You must have put it here with me, what are you up to?" I answered honestly, "I have a crush on you, I'll give you an apple, can't I?" She raised her hand to throw the apple away and I said, "Don't. I can't even eat it myself." She grunted, put away the apple and kicked the door to her room shut again. Now this woman is so arrogant that no one is like her. At night there was a knock on the door. I looked and it was Mia, the mistress of the third floor. She came to my room with the wine and meat. She said, "Little brother, I know you're too shy to join in the fun, so I've brought the food up. Don't be polite, just think of us as family." I remembered that last night, it was because I drank too much of her wine and lost my sobriety that I lost a lot of money. This time I said I wouldn't dare drink anything. But the woman wouldn't leave, snuggled up next to me, picked up her glass and took a small taste first, then brought it close to my lips. "Come on, I'll drink with you." My heart skipped a beat when she got close and her body had a strange scent. I was in the midst of my mental struggle when a figure jumped in, entering and chiding, "Who cares about your booze? Take it away." It was the hot dog princess. At the moment her eyes were wide and she had a plate of hot dogs in her hand. Ms. Mia had to leave when she saw the interruption. I pondered in my mind, hot dogs aren't as good as meat after all. Suddenly Princess Hot Dog leaned down and whispered in my ear, "None of them are human." "What did you say?" I was taken aback. "I say those on the third floor are not people. There's no one on the third floor at all." "How do you know?" "What are you looking at?" "The windows of the house on the east side of the third floor are cemented shut. Don't you know that?" I rushed up to the balcony and peered diagonally down as Princess Hot Dog illuminated from the sidelines with her cell phone flashlight. It's true. Why didn't I notice that before? The balcony windows of the home on the third floor were tightly packed with cement blocks. I realized that this was someone using a young house as a yin house. There were urns and some unclean things inside. Princess Hot Dog said, "I knew you were hit when I heard you talking and laughing there on the third floor yesterday." I said, "Yep, looks like they're trying to trick me into getting drunk so they can eat me better." "Eat you?" Princess Hot Dog froze, then moved closer to me, sniffed me and said in a daze, "So you're one of the edible ones?" I said, "Did you?" She said, "You and I both smell like that wet rot." That's what they leave behind. Where did they eat you? Hey, don't mention it. Princess Hot Dog waved her hand and pushed the hot dog toward me and said, grab a bite. She added, I sell hot dogs. I'm good with my hands. Indeed, her kimchi hot dog is a masterpiece. After watching me wolf down my food, she said, if you eat my food, you have to promise me one thing. What? Let's sleep together tonight. Her reasoning is that one cannot overcome the ghostly pressure on the bed and cannot get up to save oneself when being eaten. But when a ghost presses on a bed, if someone else touches one's body next to it, one's body can move immediately. That's what it means for two people to sleep together. To be exact, it takes two people to sleep together holding hands. This is because, when you are ghosted, often only your fingers can move slightly throughout your body. Then the person who is pinned down can try to touch the other person's hand to wake him up. Then that person in turn touches that person to bring him back into action. She made a lot of sense and I listened with anticipation. Besides, she said seriously, don't take the opportunity to molest me. She was the first to take off her jacket, leaving only her pajamas, and got under the covers, then gestured for me to pass my hand to her. Call me Sophia from now on, she said. I lay face to face with her. As I took her hand, I felt a deep, bone-deep comfort and pleasure that I had never felt before. I couldn't help but ask her, what's your destiny? I'm a wooden man. What about you? No wonder. I'm a heavenly fire, the kind that lacks wood. With you I burn brightly. Without you I go out. What she said afterward I don't know, because I was already asleep. This night our calamity came after all. I was woken up by Sophia. She tickled the back of my hand with her fingers, signaling that she was in danger. However, I couldn't care less about her, because a thick branch was being inserted into my mouth, and the branch was hollow like a tube trying to pour something into my mouth as if it were a paste strangely fragrant. How could I stand something so disgusting? I pushed the branch away as soon as I could. I whipped my head around to see Sophia. She too had one of these tubes stuck in her mouth and was gulping down something. She had a pained expression on her face, but she couldn't move, so she could only claw at the back of my hand with her fingers, begging me for help. I was about to get up to help her when more branches climbed up my body and tied me securely to the bed. In the room stood many great spectators, and the humanoids clapped their hands and laughed. Great. Mom, put more spice on them. Who's Mom? The branches? What's the spice? Is it the paste that goes into Sophia's mouth? Seeing Sophia's stomach bulge from the dunking, my eyes widened, but I had no choice but to scream in grief, I won't spare you. At the moment my right hand touches something sharp. It was the three-pronged key pendant the old woman had given me. I grasped it in my hand, and it suddenly grew much larger, as if it had become a weapon. I made a stroke with it, and the branch that bound my arm crunched and snapped. With great joy in my heart, I cut all the branches on my body in 3 strokes. Just about to get up, a silhouette suddenly pressed up, 2 hands like iron pincers clasped my arms, so that I could not move, and then a fragrant lips kissed my mouth. This person is Sophia. She certainly wasn't trying to flirt with me. She opened her mouth and all that strangely flavorful paste poured into my mouth. I tried to break free but realized that at the moment she was incredibly strong. I was completely under her control, unable to move freely. All I could do was twist my head around and close my mouth tightly, refusing to swallow those foreign objects. However, Sophia freed one hand and squeezed both my cheeks vigorously, forcing me to open my mouth and continue to swallow those things. And with my left arm nearly crippled, there was nothing I could do, even with my free hand. All I could do was gulp down the foreign objects. Yes, oddly fragrant. So I'm at the end of my rope. As I took those bites, my body went limp and my consciousness faded. The last thing I could do to think was, Sophia, it turns out you're one of them. It turns out you're the final killer. I fell for your scheme. Thanks for liking you so much. Is it over? No. At the last moment, that 3-pronged thorn suddenly disengaged itself. It burrows into my back and carves a pattern into my back. It's a flame. That pattern is a burning flame. My dying consciousness suddenly exploded with a sharp searing pain. My anger and hatred actually did turn into flames that rose up around me. The blue fire instantly burned Sophia's arm with a magnetic sound and charred smell. Sophia screamed and rolled aside. I didn't have time to care about her. I whooshed out of bed with my 3-pronged thorns and lunged towards the demons. I couldn't spare those bastards. Have those contraptions ever seen such a battle? They squealed and retreated rapidly. One of them, I remember it tried to eat my arm once but couldn't. At the moment he's running the slowest because his belly is too big and his legs are so thin he looks like 2 French fries. I saw that I had caught up with it, but unexpectedly, a branch whirled and swept it up, carrying it away with it. Where would I let them go? I chased them all the way down, and these branches and demons retreated all the way down. I was expecting them to retreat into that shady room on the east side of the 3rd floor, however no, they kept retreating into the darkened basement on the lowest level. Is that where they live? It seems that the 3rd floor of that shadowy mansion is just a place for them to use to practice deception on me. It's only because of the heavy energy that it's convenient for them to move and transform. I stood at the entrance to the basement where the darkness was thick as ink. In the deepest recesses there was also a gloating scoff, "You've been spiced. You've been spiced. Those who run away can no longer be pursued, and besides I am already very weak. I was just forced to eat a lot of paste and now I'm flipping nauseous in my stomach, dizzy and about to lose my footing." I trudged back upstairs. I had to check on Sophia. Sophia's eyes were blank, and when she saw me, she stretched out her arms in a gesture to pinch me. I slapped her front and back a dozen times and she seemed to sober up a bit. She touched her face in confusion. "Why does my face hurt so much?" She looked down at her stomach again. "You made me pregnant?" I said I couldn't do it that fast. I told her what had just happened, and I said that her stomach was big because she was trying to spice me up. After hearing this, Sophia immediately covered her mouth and ran to the restroom to vomit furiously for half a day. When I came back, I still looked at her coldly. "You think I'm in league with them?" Sophia asked. I nodded. "I'm not. I was just mind-controlled. I still don't talk." Sophia's eyes looked diagonally upward, probably not wanting the tears to fall. She grunted bitterly, then with something like determination, she reached down and lifted the lingerie off her chest. I know it's not polite to look away, but in this moment I saw something that amazed me. Do you know what a walnut tree without pesticides looks like when it has bugs? Black, ghastly, chilling as were her breasts at the moment. She rolled her head to the side and fought back tears as she said, "I'm broken here. My heart and lungs, they've been messed up by those things. I went to the hospital to get a picture and there was a big black shadow here. The doctors can't find out why and I don't have the money to treat it and I don't know how long I have to live. So, did I have to resort to this bitter trick just to fool you?" In one swift motion, I helped her pull on her shirt and then hugged her tightly. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have doubted you." She finally burst into tears and I was heartbroken. How do I save her? The next day dawned in bright sunshine and I helped Sophia pack and load her car. She still had to go out to the stall to sell hot dogs. One should try to live as long as one is still alive. Isn't it? It's funny too. Her little cart selling hot dogs had been parked under the balcony on the first floor of this building with a rope tied to it. She pulled the other end of the rope up to her second-story balcony, led it into her bedroom, tied it to the end of her bed, and hung a little bell. She was afraid that someone would steal the car, and this was a way to prevent theft. No wonder I never noticed the cart. And she went out early every day when I was still awake. She returned from her stall at 7 or 8 p.m., while I was still roaming around at the time, and I usually came home late at night. So I hadn't seen her before, and I thought I was the only one in the building. She says she's going to try to make some money, and when she does, she can move out of here. I said I'm going to earn money too so I can help cure you. As he was talking, another head poked out of the window of the building next door. The madman grinned. "The table is clean? Cutlery? Don't put more. The table is clean?" I suddenly felt something strange, although that crazy man was smiling on his face, but when I looked closely, his expression seemed to be in pain. Sophia and I looked at each other, unsure. I've failed many times in my job search, but I have to try again. And I had to make fast money, preferably daily. Thank goodness I found a job at a real estate agency. Originally this kind of work is paid monthly. But the boss said, the first few days are paid training, and you get $100 a day for the training period. That's great. The company issued me a suit. I cleaned it up a bit and still looked pretty human. Then the company sent me a big bag of flyers. I realized that the reason people were willing to pay daily was because there were going to be tons of flyers for me to hand out from building to building. A person running up and down the stairs, exhausted, busy until the night to get $100. Hard work, cheap labor. There were 4 or 5 other men and women with me. They were talking and laughing and very relaxed. They only spent an hour each handing out 1 or 2 buildings before throwing all the remaining mass of flyers in the trash and going shopping. They want to mix it up and turn in for the night and get paid. They greeted me to join them. However, I insisted on handing out all the flyers I had in my hand, and I was busy until late in the evening. When I went back, the guys had gone home and only the manager was waiting for me. The manager said with a gloomy face, "Just now, all the employees in the company complained about you, saying that you have an eccentric personality and are not good at handling interpersonal relationships. They can't accept you. So I can only let you go." I couldn't take the blow. I struggled. They're the ones who don't take their job seriously. The manager waved his hand. I can only choose to believe them. I can't let you stay alone and let them all go, can I? Then you can give me $100. What money? The manager was surprised. You're kind of fired, where's the money? This night, I went down to the restaurant with what little money I had left and got drunk. Fate has given me endless darkness and refused to give me a ray of light. I am in deep despair. I don't care if I starve myself. But how can I save Sophia if I can't make any money? Like someone and have been attached ever since. I'm not willing to. As I got on my bike to head back, I wobbled and fell head over heels. The ground was cold and biting, the long road was cold and windy, and a deep weariness came over me. I can't afford to get up, it's better to just freeze to death. I woke up in my own bed with the sky outside my window. Sophia sat beside me and looked at me grudgingly. Looking at her tired face, I think she hadn't slept all night. You're a pain in the ass. If I hadn't come back from closing my stall and seen you lying on the side of the road, you would have frozen to death. I pulled you back like a dead pig. I saw Sophia pinching a needle in her right hand, while her left wrist had many pinholes. I asked her what was going on. She said that this night she was afraid that if she fell asleep, she wouldn't be able to cope with the demons alone. So she kept stabbing her hands with needles as a way to stay awake. And the demons just over there on the couch, staring at her all night long but not doing anything about it. She tried to push me awake while I was royally drunk. My lips trembled with excitement as I grabbed Sophia's hand and said, "You've been so good to me, I'll protect you with my life in this life. I'm not doing this for your own good." Sophia twisted her face and secretly wiped her eyes. I suddenly remembered what the old woman had said. Ghosts haunt people for 7 days. I asked Sophia what day she was approached by the demon. It turns out that it's been 4 days for her, just like me. So that means that after 3 more days you'll be saved? As soon as I said the idea, hope lit up in Sophia's eyes as well. I said, "These next 3 days, you sleep well and leave everything to me." It was the 5th night that I snatched the needle out of Sophia's hand and patted her gently, lulling her to sleep like a child. "I'm on duty tonight." However, Sophia insisted on sitting with me. She said she was afraid I'd fall asleep. I said, "Are we men so untrustworthy?" She said, "I've never met a good man anyway." It's late at night. A voice outside the door suddenly asked, "Are you asleep?" After a while another voice asked, "Are you asleep?" Each time the voice is different, before and after. This night there are hundreds of voices to inquire. So angry that I copied the bottle of water and slammed to the door. I did not sleep. "I'm waiting for you all to come." Sophia and I wrapped the covers around us and snuggled close. To pass the time, Sophia talked about what had happened to her. "I need to tell you that I have a child with my mother back home. I just got divorced. My ex-husband is a brute. He's a whore, a gambler, a domestic abuser, and a mistress. It's my fault for being blind. His family is well off. When we divorced, the court wanted to give him the children, but I insisted on raising them alone. I can't let the child follow that scum. I'm not very well educated. I can only make hot dogs to earn money for my family. I thought I could eke out an existence like this, but one night, on my way back from closing up my stall, I was dragged by a man into the roadside woods and raped. I called the police to no avail. And then I found out I was pregnant. I had to get an abortion, and that was the other day. So you see, I couldn't even lift a gas can. I was getting sick. The child is weak and sick, and I have to pay tuition fees soon, so I really don't have any money either," Sophia summarized with a bitter smile. "I'm an uneducated, divorced, childless, penniless woman. And with a dirty body. I amuse her." "What are you talking about? There aren't many women in the 800-mile radius as good as you, princess of hot dogs. If I could marry you, I'd be in great demand. Are you with me or not? Give a quick answer. Hey, why are you hitting me?" This night, the demons wandered out but did not come in. At dawn, Sophia freshened up and wanted to help me clean up my room. I looked at the messy table and suddenly remembered the crazy man's words, and my mind shook. Was there a possibility if extra cutlery was put on the table, it would attract demons? 1 pair of cutlery for 1 person, 2 for 2, and as long as you don't put more in, maybe you'll be safe? I told Sophia about this guess and she nodded. "Let's try it." We cleared the table, leaving only 2 bowls and 2 sets of cutlery. So, this 6th night they actually didn't come. When I untied the branches from my feet and chased them around the corner to the 2nd floor, Sophia had already dismantled the rapist. She turned and looked at me with a look of finally getting her revenge. When he was alive, he was the one who raped me, and I recognize him even now that he's a ghost. At this moment, the long night is coming to an end. I let out a long breath. Is it all over? Not yet. I saw a dark shadow approaching behind Sophia. I exclaimed, "Watch your back." As I spoke, a pair of black hands pinched Sophia's neck from behind. Sophia is really a woman of honor. If it were an ordinary woman, she would have to be scared soft on the spot. Without looking back, she took her 3-pronged thorn to the back of her neck and cut off the black hands. She turned to look, and another pair of black hands snatched her weapon straight away. That's when I got a good look too and couldn't help but feel my scalp tingle. It was a dense, ominous mass of demons, and it was still coming up. They don't just come from the basement, but more are swarming in from outside the building. How can there be so many? Sophia and I could only run upstairs.
I suddenly realized that to hide in the house now would be like waiting to die, and my door had never been able to keep them out. The building was only 4 stories and I looked at the skylight overhead. This old matchbox building had a skylight in this location. Someone took wood and made a simple cover. Just grab the handrail, poke the lid and climb to the top of the building. We'll get away with it for a while. I let Sophia climb up first, but she was so weak that she couldn't open the lid. I had to switch to me. I vigorously pushed open the lid. At this moment the hungry ghosts had already flocked to the corner of the stairs. You get up there. Leave me alone. Sophia called from below. How could I say yes? How could I leave a woman alone? It's not too late. Pull me when you get up there. Sophia held my legs up hard. I had to climb to the roof and backhand her, when Sophia froze staring at the lid. There was an iron pin underneath the lid with an unsnapped lock hanging from it. I have a bad feeling about this. What do you want? Sophia grabbed my hand. Sophia suddenly laughed, reached out a hand, patted my face and then bam, topped off the lid from below. Then she inserted the iron pin and fastened the iron lock. The skylight in this old building had an iron pin to insert from the bottom up. Whereas from above, there is no such mechanism, and as long as it is plugged in from below, it cannot be opened from above. Sophia shouted from below, "This lid is made of old apricot wood, and locks up to keep out the netherworld. It is better for one to live than for two to die together. Farewell, Leon." It was a moment of grief and anger, and I kicked that skylight as hard as I could, but I couldn't do anything about it. From below came the sardonic laughter of the evil spirit and Sophia's moans. Standing on the roof of the building, I looked out and what I saw was haunting. From afar, countless gray demonic creatures, like thousands of streams merging into the sea, rushed this way. This is hell on earth. Sophia, if you die, I will never live alone. Fishbelly white in the east. It was suddenly quiet down below, and the demons running along the road disappeared. That skylight cover made a click sound, and the iron pins and locks surprisingly opened by themselves. I climbed down in a state of disorientation, and there were spots of blood drops and drag marks in the hallway. Following the bloodstains, I came to the basement entrance. It was dark there, dark and mysterious, like a maw that swallowed up light and life. I turned my head to see that behind me was the exit to the building, and it was already light outside. On one side there was a way to live, and on the other side there was nothing to lose. How do I choose? Do I need to choose? I sneer and stride into the basement. I stepped off on my first foot and nearly fell into the abyss. Once my eyes had adjusted a little to my surroundings, I realized that this was a different basement than I remembered. It was a bottomless pit that went straight up and down and had a large diameter. There are stone staircases clinging to the cave walls, circling down. The light in the cave came from the eyes on the stone walls. Countless spiteful eyes that emitted a shimmering light as they blinked. There was a woman's moan, coming from the bottom of a deep cave. Sophia's alive? I descended the stone staircase, and the further I went, the hotter it got, as if there was boiling lava down there. After about 500 steps, I finally reached the bottom and a giant tree loomed over me. I know that this is the mom of the hungry ghosts. Sophia is pinned to the trunk of a tree, bruised and dying. What can I do? Supporting my shaky body, I looked up at the giant tree and asked it, "We have nothing against each other, why this?" The giant tree moved, countless branches and vines dancing and cracking open countless eyes and mouths. "You're aggrieved? We've got a bigger problem than you." One mouth said so. "Very well, it seems that you bear injustice and then inflict it on others. You must hate the one who made you suffer injustice. But why live as you hate? It's funny that I'm debating with one person against 10. You reason with us on the basis of what you think is right in your heart. But your reason does not exist. It is only your own belief that there should be laws and axioms in the world. Why don't you think about it the other way around? Maybe the world is supposed to be a place where the weak are the strongest and strength is the most important thing. Right and wrong are the protests of the weak. And all we should do is to plunder what we want to our heart's content." The other mouth was as revitalized. I took a deep breath and said, "Let the woman go and I'll do whatever you want." All the mouths in the trees laughed. "You're just a lamb to the slaughter, what are you going to bargain with?" I shuddered. "Let the woman go or I'll bite you to death." Those mouths were laughing so hard they couldn't catch their breath. Biting? A bitch? So I pounced and bit. I went at the trunk like a rabid dog. I know it's ridiculous and pathetic. But other than that, there was really nothing I could do. This is the only protest that weak can make in the face of strong. The giant tree ate the pain and howled back, all its mouths gnawing at me together. I bit them, they bit me. It was a very chaotic scene and no one would let go. Just then there was a knock on the door. From far, far above. A voice said, "What a racket you guys are making." Then there were footsteps down the steps. Is that the old woman? The old woman slowly walked closer. She picked up the three-pronged thorn from somewhere and carefully pinned it to her waist. Stop biting and listen to me. The old woman took out another bottle with a willow in it. She took the willow and dipped it into the bottle and dusted it towards Sophia. Immediately, Sophia's body stopped bleeding and she was released from her bonds. She saw that it was me who had come, and threw herself into my arms, weeping with joy. The giant tree was disgruntled. You're so nosy. It is my duty to mind my own business. The old woman said, I had thought that the boy was being targeted by you because of his karma, so I didn't want to ask about it. After all, divine power is no match for karma, and I can't just interfere with cause and effect. But that day the boy came to my rescue and that act of kindness made me suspicious. I suspected that he was suffering from injustice. These 10 demon-subduing mortars and pestles around my waist are designed to listen to the injustices of the 10 worlds. I gave one to him to monitor things around him. Now that I am certain that he is experiencing a calamity beyond his destiny, I have rushed here. The giant tree sneered, You care about his injustice, who cares about ours? The old woman said, All of you in the hungry ghost path have suffered a lot because of your karma in your past lives. What injustice is there? Is that so? Then let me ask you, is it really reasonable for the heavens to punish us? We have to suffer a lot if we make a little mistake. Are those lawmakers too capricious? Like me, my family is poor and I can't get a wife. I can only go to a foot massage parlor and pay for services. What's wrong with paying for services that you and I want? Is it reasonable to let me fall into the path of the hungry ghosts because of this? A mouth grumbled like this. When I was a child, I couldn't afford to eat, but when I grew up, I was a glutton for punishment. Every meal was filled with chicken, duck, fish, and seafood. Then you said I killed too much and sent me to the hungry ghost. What have I done? You're sorry for the chickens, ducks, fish, and meat? Why are they animals in this life? Because they were punished for their wrongdoings? They should take the blame for their own mistakes. Why should they blame the people who eat them? A mouth complained in this way. So, concluded the giant tree, we are not willing to suffer hunger. The little charity you do to us on earth, the bon or whatever, isn't enough. We'll have to find a way to hunt our own food. The grievances of us hungry ghosts have taken the form of a tree, which we respectfully call Mother. Mother has the power to tear a hole in space, connecting our hungry ghost paths to the earth. Each time the rift opens for 7 days, allowing us to consume the young marrow of the human body to our heart's content. I couldn't help but interject. Does the person you're targeting have anything to do with how many sets of cutlery are on the table? There is a connection. Because of our limited energy, we will only seek out people who are easy to consume during the 7 days it takes to open the rift. And if you have extra cutlery on your table, it's similar to a kind of hyphenation spell, making it very effortless for us to go after you. Didn't we clear the table later? Why are they still after us? How can you let the food you're about to get fly away? Besides, it's got spices. The old woman listened attentively, her face grave. Perhaps the laws of heaven are debatable. I will reflect this to the higher-ups when I return. However, the crimes you have committed and the sins you have killed really make it hard for me to explain. Let's put it this way, I will dismiss all your souls and reincarnate them. In the next life, I will give you a chance to become human beings. Those whom you have harmed in this life will become your parents in the next life, and you must be filial to them and must not be disobedient. If you behave well, I will write off your karmic obstacles. All the mouths of the trees are grateful for obedience. The old woman reached up and patted the trunk of the tree and waved her hand in the air again. A golden storm swirled throughout the abyss and countless white butterflies fluttered upward, accompanied by unrestrained cheers. When I opened my eyes again, I was sitting against the basement door. It was already daylight outside the building. Sophia, fully dressed and scantily clad, kicked me with her foot. Hey, I said, lazybones, get up and come out to the stall with me. I followed her in a trance and asked uncertainly, is it already all right? Aha. Sophia nodded her head beautifully and then said to herself, in the future, you give me a hand, help to greet the guests, I hear, just add more tableware, tube you eat and live are not a problem. Look at your performance after half a year and then give you a name. I said, you want to be your boyfriend? Hey, Sophia, what do you think the identity of that old woman is? Looks aside, I think she's the goddess of mercy. That's right, Sophia. When we live together from now on, we can only put 2 pairs of dishes on the table, so I don't dare to put more. I know. Nonsense.